Big red button. Okay. Welcome to the August meeting. Beautiful morning. Glad that you're all here. There is no free lunch, but the crowd indicates it looks like yeah, sorry. That was in June, so I'm sorry if you missed that. Moving right along, we need approval of the July 20th, 2019 board meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? Yep. Any?
I make a motion to pass.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we move and pass the minutes of the July meeting. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Treasurer's report, Mr. Blackwell. If you are ready.
I think I'm ready.
Okay.
$67,742 in income for July, $40,889 in expenses. Total income, $26,853. So with that, I'll accept a motion for approval of claims for July, approval of vouchers.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, so Adam and I went to the DLGF meeting this summer, like we always do. And because we put the $1 million in last year's, well, this year's budget, we did that. We need to do a budget reduction of the $1 million. I'm sure there's probably going to be some questions. Basically, when we went to the DLGF meeting, we were off by $250,000, and it was because we put the $1 million in there. Basically, if we're not going to get the $1 million, it should have been appropriated, but that is the reason for the budget reduction. We got to take the $1 million back out of the 2019 budget. So if there's no other questions, or I'll open it up for questions for the board.
If I understand right, basically what we're showing is that we're deducting the $1 million in proceeds we were anticipating receiving from the bond, and then the associated expenses with it.
Very
So it's
well
not-
said.
Yeah.
Very well said.
But then where does it go into next year then?
Well, that'll come up when I read next year's budget, okay? So,
We thought it was kind of a wash having the expenses and the revenue, but when we talked with them, they said on paper, it looks like we're off by $1 million in our budget because we budgeted for a certain extent and we're not using that. So it essentially just takes that out and makes it on the revenue side, so pretty common practice, they said.
right, he's absolutely correct. It's very common. For us to balance out in the middle of the year so that we can get our 2020 budget in, this is required by the Department of Local Government Finance.
So you need a motion for
I
this
do,
resolution?
yes, to approve this resolution.
I would move to approve Resolution 8-1904, adjusting the budgets as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same side. Motion carries. Madam Chair?
Thank you, sir. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, manager's report.
All right, the first thing that we have on the report is Resolution 8-1903, it's the adoption of the minimum internal control standards. Essentially what this is the State Board of Accounts has what they consider some key aspects and principles of internal controls. And what this resolution says is that we will utilize those principles, being keeping an eye on it, training staff, kind of general stuff. When we met with the Board of Accounts on our last audit, we actually didn't have anything wrong with our internal controls, other than we haven't formally adopted this, so it's not actually going to impact our processes. We just have to have this on paper. What will come along with this is they do have an online training through the State Board of Accounts that we'll have all the staff go through. It's like a 20-minute video, and then there's certificates that we have to keep on file. And that was implemented about 2 years ago, so we just got to get that on file. Because a lot of places are catching up on that, and I didn't see the resolution coming out. So with that, I would request approval of Resolution 8-1903.
I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion.
Coming apart. Stay calm. So it has been moved and seconded that we adopt the resolution 8-1903. Are there any further questions, or is there any further discussion on that?
Have you actually taken the training yet?
I have taken on mine, yes, it's very exciting.
That's one word for it. I can say it's the best training video I've ever taken in my life, but anyway.
Any other questions? All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of this adoption of this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Next up, we have a barge operations update. We're currently digging in zone 136, we're 800 yards from that, which is the northern channel in Chilwood that runs east-west. We recently finished zone 138, which is the western channel that runs north-south. Out of that channel, we removed 5,700 cubic yards. Total, so year-to-date, we removed 9,053 cubic yards, close to 2,000 yards more than we were last year this time. So we're moving along really good. I think it's going to be a really good year for sediment removal. We'll be continuing to move through that Chitwood channel. Once we're done with that, we'll start doing some private work, and that'll be the final LLCD work that we do. We'll start doing some private digging and shoreline restoration reinforcement with riprap. And we budget for that money, potential revenue coming in. So that should be, I hate to give timelines, we'll probably be digging for at least a month in that channel. It's a pretty long channel. Luckily, we can use the big barge, it should go relatively quick. So we'll be there trucking along until we're done with that channel. For vegetation control, we had our second treatment for emergent vegetation, which is primarily lotus and Satterdock, last Friday. It generally takes about a week to 2 weeks for the kill to kick in, so we will be going around this coming week and checking to make sure that we got that 90% kill. Most of this is on the eastern end, on the maintenance line, east of Point Eidolon, and then some of the channels. Besides that, most of the other submerged vegetation is looking pretty good. I think we had a pretty good kill the first treatment that we did. I'm really not anticipating treating most likely any more this year. By the time we get to this late and the water starts cooling down, it really stunts the growth of the vegetation. So hopefully we should be done. We're actually well under budget for this, which we were last year too. I think a lot of that has to do with the long spring rains. Stay wet forever, the water gets muddy, so no light can penetrate to the vegetation. So that's been helping us out quite a bit. Along with vegetation and water quality, I do have an IU water testing agreement. It's a contract amendment that I would like to get passed. Currently, IU does our lake-wide water testing. During the season for the beach, we have to test weekly for E. coli, which you all know about now. And we actually bring those samples down to the Dolman treatment plant that's owned by City of Bloomington Utilities. They recently raised their rates to close to $45 per sample. And for essentially the same price, we have IU test our weekly samples throughout the beach season. And every other week they actually test for blue-green algae now, which is a pretty expensive test. And that's something that the City of Bloomington Utilities is not capable of doing. So the contract amendment was for an additional $1,500. That included this season. They've kind of been doing a little bit in advance, and now it includes next season too. So that $1,500 is spread over $750 per year. And I would like to go ahead and request approval of this amendment. And essentially, it's adding the beach sampling and blue-green algae sampling to our existing contract.
Which will be offset by the savings that we
Yes.
are paying to the CBU.
Correct, yeah, we won't be paying anymore, so it's essentially a wash for that. Plus, we get the benefit of the additional blue-green algae testing.
May I ask a question? So, can the IU group differentiate the E. coli between animal and human? I know the state can do it now.
IU cannot, the state can do that. I have been in contact with Brown County. Next time they bring samples up, I told them to get ahead of me. They said they do it a couple times throughout the season. They said they have a 6-hour holding time from the time they get samples to get them to Indy. So I told them to give me a half-hour heads up and I'll have samples out to them. So I am working with them,
Good.
and we should be able to do that here in the near future.
Good deal.
Along with that too, the E. coli spiked, as we all know, this past Wednesday or Thursday morning we tested. We've actually been really low. The state threshold is 235, what they call a one-time grab sample. Generally what you do for samples is you average it out over the month. And our samples have been coming back very low, usually in the 0 to 10 range for most of the time. So seeing a spike like this, from my understanding, really leads me to believe it was most likely something agricultural. It's been really dry, so what I imagine happening is that some farmers are out there, we have some big farms spreading manure, not anticipating this Wednesday rain that we had overnight. And when we tested Thursday morning, I bet we just caught that pulse coming down through. I'd be willing to bet the samples are much lower now, however, we can't test again until Monday when the labs are open. But when you have a spike that high, that quick, that usually indicates agricultural and just a runoff from the watershed. Our blue-green algae counts are still very low, and Monday when we come back, we will test for that as well. With the increased nutrients from E. coli, there's potential for it can activate a bloom, or can lead into that. A lot of food for the algae bacteria. So we will test for that Monday as well, and we should have an email out either Monday or Tuesday as soon as we get results back, notifying everybody about that.
So Adam, I emailed Sarah Powers about this, and she said that she was gonna get you some samples from the tributaries. Did
Yes.
she do that?
She's taken the samples, and I will have a report going out to the board early next week that
Okay,
has
so we don't
those in
have
there.
results yet?
Yeah, no, we'll have that to the board early next week.
Okay.
So you need a motion, Adam, to amend this contract?
Correct.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
It has been moved and seconded that we amend the IU water testing agreement as described. Any further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And if I recall right with the testing, especially when you're testing for coliform, and E. coli, there's a 24-hour, 48-hour window before you actually get your final results.
Correct. So they're pretty quick. I use much faster than the City of Bloomington Utilities. So when we drop a sample off Monday, I should have results sometime Tuesday during the day. But it does take about 24 hours because there's an incubation period where they actually have to grow their colonies before they can count them.
What did it spike to?
It hit 310, which is pretty high. The maximum single sample grab is 235. If you get into the 200 range, what you do on that is you would look at your averages and say, all right, we had one high spike, but consistently we're low, and it was probably just a pulse coming through. But when you actually see that on paper, you got to react on that, because we are a permitted facility. The beach is permitted like a swimming pool, so there's certain recreational standards we have to stay within. Once we saw that, we had to close it down and then test again on Monday. And that's all I have for the engine report.
All right, thank you. Mike, it's back to you, the final discussion today on the 2020 proposed LCD budget.
I'll open it up for discussion to the board. I know Michael has weighed in on residential, non-residential, and I'm open for discussion.
So basically, to kind of kick it off a little bit, the idea is it's been 12 years.
It was 2012 was the last time we raised rates.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's been 7 years.
7 years.
Since we last looked at user fees. Typically best practices, because obviously our operating expenses continue to go up just by the cost of inflation. But the best practices are usually to look at your fees on an every 2 to 3 year basis, just to make sure that you're keeping up. And that way you can also do minor increases when appropriate, as opposed to doing huge catch-ups, which too often governmental agencies get caught into, which creates more pain for everyone. I think people understand little increases every now and then as opposed to big increases. I gave some spreadsheets just for the sake of discussion, not saying that that's what I'm proposing, but just to illustrate the impact it could have. I did request, as I think all of you probably saw, to see what Adam's staff would suggest, and they provided that, and that's, I believe you also handed out at your seats to see. And looking at those numbers and plugging them into my spreadsheet, which allows us to compare 2018 usage, since we have a full year's worth of data, to how it would impact our fees. It's in the range of a $15,000 net increase in the revenues, plus or minus, as far as revenue that would be able to generate it through the modest increases that he's recommending. So one of the things that I would also like the board to consider, and I'm not asking for any vote or consideration tonight. I think I'm one that I think it's important for us to be able to see the information as far as what's being recommended, as well as for the public to be able to see it in our board packets. and then to vote on it at a subsequent meeting. But one of the things that I think we also should begin considering is, as we're looking at the strategic plan and operations here for the lake, we've been focusing pretty significantly, as we should, on the water quality and predominantly the sedimentation and how to best manage that. But one of the things that also is a component, which hasn't been as much at the forefront, again, appropriately so, is the infrastructure we have here at Riddle Point Park, which is not in the best of shape by any means or standards. So one of the things that I would also propose for consideration, again, not asking for any decisions tonight, or today, excuse me, is that additional revenue that we generate off of any increases in user fees potentially be set aside for capital reinvestment here at Riddle Point Park. I mean, this shelter certainly needs help, if not replaced. The restroom facilities certainly need help, if not replaced. And I could continue that down the line. And, you know, again, our primary focus must be towards the lake, because that's why all of us are here in the first place. But this facility, Riddle Point, does serve as a significant revenue driver for us, because this is our primary source for collecting user fees, especially from everyone, but from people that are coming outside that aren't freeholders. So just food for thought with regard to that. The other strategy that I've proposed too is, obviously we have been asking more financial commitment through our taxes to our freeholders. So as we look at user fees, which also freeholders pay, I would recommend that we try to keep the increases to our freeholders minimal and maybe slightly higher, but also not beyond the threshold of significantly impacting demand for our non-residents. So that's sort of my thoughts to kick off the conversation.
And the recommendations on here do increase non-resident rates by a greater percentage than the resident rates. We did reflect that, because we are seeing a lot more people coming from outside. I think a lot of that had to do with Monroe being flooded out for the springtime and never leaving. But we're definitely seeing an increase at the beach, non-resident boats, jet skis. So the proposed rates here do reflect that.
And not every fee is proposed for an increase.
That's correct. We did take into account for some of the different types of passes, whether you're a resident but you don't keep your boat on the water, non-residents, there's multiple types of fees that you'll pay at one time. You pay a boat fee and you pay a ramp fee. So we took that into consideration to not try to hit people with a double whammy where we're increasing both fees that they have to pay. So some of the daily ramp fees are proposed to pretty much stay the same. That's because we are increasing the pass rate. So we will see an increase, but I don't want to raise rates 20%, by hitting them twice.
And my assessment is based solely on the boat permits and the daily launch or admission fees. I'm not looking at the other fees that are included in the resolution.
So now, if you're launching for the season, when you're a resident, do you still have to pay the ramp fee, or is that?
Not if you store your boat on the water.
Yes, so you get a one in and one out.
Yeah. And that's been proposed to a minimal raise from $68 to $70.
Now, Michael, I think in reading your previous emails, you also suggested that we drop the feature that allows CBU customers in for free.
Yeah, that would have to be a contract negotiation, because that's within the lease agreement. But if we get to the point where we're having those discussions, I think that would be one of the things that I would recommend as one of our negotiation requests, is that obviously the freeholders now, originally when we took over the lake, and this, obviously I wasn't around at that, I was around as far as being alive, but not around the lake, was that the citizens of Bloomington had made a significant investment in the original development of the lake. But it's now been quite some time since the city has put any financial resources into the capital infrastructure that we have here at Lake Lemon. So the idea is that, okay, our residents, our freeholders who are paying towards the ongoing operations and maintenance of this lake should receive some degree of a discount for the user fees. But those who are not contributing to the taxes and the ongoing maintenance and operation of it should contribute a little bit more through the user fees. So because the city is no longer making that financial investment, I would argue that we've probably gone long enough that they should pay the non-resident rates. But again, that's a point of negotiation.
That's a good case. So do people even know about it? Do they do it?
Yeah, they do, mostly fishermen, and honestly, it's been getting more popular recently. There hasn't been a whole lot. The fishermen are the ones that mostly know about it. The way the contract or the lease is written with the city is anybody that gets their water through City of Blue Ridge Utilities or their subsidiaries such as B&B Water Project can get a resident rate because they're paying taxes to the owner of the lake, essentially the utility company.
Okay. Now, one of the suggestions that I have, to get some feedback on that, was to increase the fee for wake boats. Being as how the shoreline impact from those things can get pretty significant. I mean, before those things were invented, we'd have high winds every now and then, but now, you get it almost daily, at least on the weekends, with these waves like this. And I know it's not my shoreline. And I would like to consider, maybe charging those folks the same as jet skis, based on the shoreline impact. And anybody with a tower has to pay the extra fee.
So that would be the definition as far as how to be able to distinguish the rate differential.
Yeah.
That's the tower.
Yeah. Now, I know some pontoon boats have towers, I wouldn't count those, but, the true wake boats, if they have a tower, they're probably a wake boat, So I don't know, I mean, the enforcement of it, might be a little difficult, I don't know, I wanted to throw that out there and see what people thought about that.
The only concern that I have is getting a little nitpicky on how we differentiate what we would classify as a wake boat. Because I can have somebody coming with a pontoon in a tower, or I can have Joe Blow coming in that has a tower, but it's an old ski boat, they're not using it for those type of activities. And maybe something that we consider is looking to add that either into our ordinances or looking at the behavioral side of it and maybe not allowing, type of wakes action or pushing them further out where you have to be so far from the shoreline to do any type of activity like that. I definitely see what you're saying though. We used to never have that at all. Now people are out there wake skating, wakeboarding, and the waves are just insane from them.
Well, we're getting more small boats that are jet boats that they're getting their permit as a boat, but they're still more of a jet ski. I mean, jet skis get bigger than you have the steerage and stuff out there. So.
Probably due to being the shallow
I mean,
factor.
I agree with you, Adam. It opens it up to a lot of interpretation for all the boats on the lake, pretty much.
I would say, I think we need to do some education in that area as well. I would not be adverse to charging more for those types of watercraft, given that we're trying to save the lake and minimize the flow of sediment. It seems that we need to do something, but we also need to educate people about why. So it's not, oh, I'm getting punished because I have a jet ski or a wake boat.
Just that's.
This is the cost of doing business,
And there is a real impact.
so to speak.
There is a real impact from those wake boats and the sedimentation. With the Indiana Lakes Management Group, one of the papers that we saw recently at a conference was actually a guy that was studying the redistribution of sedimentation from different types of boating activities. They actually kind of put some numbers to that, and they said that there was quite a big increase in the re-suspension of the sediment. So maybe what we do is, over the next month or so, we try to come up with a descriptor of how we would classify these boats. We can create a new category, absolutely, that's not an issue there. But I think we should take the time and say, how would we actually classify these? What's the breakdown? What are we going to say for hard rules on this is considered a wake boat, this is the higher fees? So if we have a discussion on that, and I could work with you on that, Les, and we could come up with a descriptor on that and then bring that to the board.
It might be interesting too to see how other lakes have handled it. I mean, I'm sure we're not the only lake that's experiencing that challenge, so we might see what some similar types of operations have done, if anything.
Well, maybe what we do is collect that information, get it out to the board in the next couple of weeks, and then I think this would fit nicely with our thought that we should, if we are to increase fees and charges, it should be in conjunction with the approval of the budget, which would be in September. Would that be an acceptable thought if we chew on this a bit and come back next month with the intent of yea or nay?
You know, as far as the financial burden on the boat owners, I mean, those boats are pretty high end. You know, that's a tank of gas for, you know, to, the amount of increase that we'd be asking for them. But
Very well, we'll table Resolution 8-1902, 2020 fees and charges until next month. Okay, well, I'll stand up so everybody can hear me. This is my third read of the 2020 budget, and I'll go through it pretty quickly. If you have some questions, I'll give you the account number, and we can discuss it when I get finished reading the third read. Revenues, everything is staying flat in the revenues. We have a $5,000 increase in grants and donations, $4,000 increase in park admission fees we're proposing, and then dredging riprap income increase of $10,000. We're going to leave the $1 million in the revenue side of the budget. I feel very strongly that we will probably get a $1 million bond in 2020 and start our sediment management process. And more will come when Mary Jane reads her report, I would assume.
Or maybe when Adam,
Okay, or when, thank you.
maybe both.
That is account number 4140, if we come back to that.
Okay.
Moving on to wages. We will hire, we have discussed and have in the plans to hire a full-time dredging operator, which reduces the cost of account 6100, 6110, and 6111 hourly wages to bring this guy on full-time. So overall, in wages, there's only an increase of $9,000 because we eliminated the hourly rate and we're bringing this person on full-time. Difference of $9,000. And that's wages, perf, Social Security, et cetera. Okay? Supplies, very minimal changes in supplies. We're assuming that the regular gas and diesel will go up. So operating supplies is going to go up $3,000. Repair and maintenance supplies remains flat. We are purchasing new uniforms for the staff. We're going to get some more signs and nautical markers. So only an increase of $2,900 in supplies. Services and charges. We believe that grass mowing will go up. Currently, we're paying $10,560. We're budgeting $15,000 for mowing. Consulting engineers will remain at $50,000. And let's see. So really, with the changes in those two categories, we still remain at $10,050 in services and charges. Next page, still services and charges continued. Buildings and grounds, we reduced that we reduced it by $5,500. That's going to remain at $10,000. Equipment rental, we raised that $2,500 to $7,500. Cumulative maintenance fund, we have talked about this as a board to increase our cumulative maintenance fund, $2,500. So that'll be a $7,500 increase in 6610. However, I believe that we will have some discussion in adopting a cumulative maintenance, what am I trying to say here?
Cumulative maintenance fund, can we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, instead of just having one general fund, we will have a general fund and a cumulative maintenance fund. We'll talk more about that maybe next month, because we will have to start looking at that in January, okay? Dam spillway repairs, $5,000. There was zero budgeted this year. Disposal site prep, we're adding another $5,000 in there for $15,000. And fireworks from $6,500 to $8,000. Total increase of services and charges, really only $2,000 from $337 to $339. Capital improvements, really, I think the only capital improvement that we have on the books for next year is to either purchase or build a new gatehouse for $30,000. And that'll conclude the read of the 2020 budget. So, Madam Chair?
Thank you very much. I would entertain any questions from the public at this point, since it's fresh in your mind. If you have any, please raise your hand and we'll call on you. Malcolm?
I know the Conservancy has like $450,000 in savings from over the years. If that were needed towards some of the dredging project, is there anything that needs to be done now in order to be able to make that accessible or not?
We don't need a resolution or an appropriate, have the money. It would just be a board vote that we would move money out of our CDs or whatever. I will just touch briefly on this cumulative maintenance fund. That's a 3-cent tax on $100 of assessed valuation that we really have been losing. I'll speak on the behalf of city government. So, city government, they use our cumulative maintenance fund to buy fire trucks, repair fire stations, et cetera. And it's just an income that we have been losing over a number of years. And it's something that I would propose. It's a minimal tax, but it's an income stream of approximately $50,000 that we could use for money that we're actually spending out of our general fund.
It's capital projects, so it has to be something, I mean, the investments we're making in the overall maintenance of the park system would fit, the lake fit into that, capital repairs here in the park. But the key is it has to be capital. It's not
Correct.
recurring, regular operations. So it doesn't fund people, our staff. It doesn't fund the supplies that go into filling our dredging equipment, that type of stuff. It would actually be the major projects.
To kind of tie in the sediment management with the bond proceeds, we've been looking at the sediment transport study. We don't have the final report yet, but we do have preliminary information. What we do know is the sediment coming in is much more than we anticipated. It's very fine sediment. It's actually falling out pretty evenly around the entire lake as a whole. It's just much more noticeable in the delta area because there's less depth there already. So with some of the studies that we're looking at now, and based on that, Christopher Burke is saying it's very hard to get these very fine sediments out of solution utilizing something that's a 4-bay or a sediment capture bay. And they're really saying to remove the most sediment, probably the best option for the money is to just go for it and do hydraulic dredging to actually remove the sediment. When we did our bond studies with Baker Tilly, there's an uncontrolled and a controlled bond. We were looking at doing this entire $3.5 million project. We were looking at the controlled bond area, potential remonstrance, the public voting. The uncontrolled limit was $1.3 million for the bond. We also have some equipment that's getting pretty old now, especially our dump truck, which has been on its last legs for a while. And those are in the $150,000 to $200,000 range for an off-road dump truck, which we need in these disposal sites. So what I would propose or have up for discussion, since this is the last time to change the budget, is potentially changing those bond proceeds from $1 million to $1.2 million in this budget. We have $1 million towards the sediment project, and then we'd have another $200,000 for capital improvement. We recently had some mechanics out to look at the dump truck, went to the transmission screens. Essentially, we paid them to tell us what we knew is that it's on our last legs and it could go out anytime from tomorrow through next year. But if that goes down, we're dead in the water. And triaxles wouldn't last a day in these disposal sites. There's so much mud. So I'd like to entertain that idea of potentially budgeting for 1.2 in the bonding. It would be potentially a minimal, the tax that we have at $67,000 we raised would pay for the majority of that payback over the 20-year loan, and that's why we did raise it $67,000 last year. So I don't know, thoughts on that?
And the threshold is 1.3 million
1.3, yeah.
for it to change from an uncontrolled to controlled, so it would
Correct.
still be below that.
Correct.
You mentioned hydraulic dredging. So are you saying that the study's now showing that these little catch basins are not the solution? Or
He says with how fine it is, they were weary of us spending that much money to build these catch basins when they're not positive that we will get this 90% capture rate that we're looking at because the sediment is so fine and stays in suspension. They said in order to have a catch basin that would catch this real fine sediment, it would have to be huge, much bigger than we were anticipating by putting it on the east end there. So they said we could do more studies and look at the efficiency of it. They go, what we would recommend is just hydraulic dredge and not use the money on that. That saves us money in the long run, and potentially what that does is it keeps us from being $3.5 million in debt for 20 years. If we are going to do the hydraulic dredging, and that's the best way to go, what I would recommend is we use this bond for this first round of $1 million hydraulic dredging in that eastern bay, which I think would give the majority of it 2-5 feet where that spit is coming out past Ellis Point. And then potentially in the future, what we do, instead of going into debt for dredging, with this cumulative maintenance fund, we could raise money over, say, 6 to 7 years, set it where every 6 years we get another $1 million in the bank, and then we go back and do a hydraulic dredging project then. But then we're not getting into debt for continuously dredging, which is going to be nonstop.
So there'd be no structural changes, all those studies that we had, there was maps and all that stuff, so all that's out the window, and we would just simply run a hydraulic dredge and...
Well, the Shrewsbury report had that 4-bay, those had all the different options, and in that Shrewsbury report, some of the options we're looking at just hydraulically dredging, and those elements 1 and 2 and 3, I think 1 through 5 in that report. So the Shrewsbury report essentially showed us all the options.
Yeah.
The catchment looked very appeasing, functionality-wise, looked like it should work really well, but the sediment transport study is telling us that it may not be as functional as we were hoping.
Well, might be simpler than just suck out the mud,
Yeah.
be done with it.
Gail, I'll take one question.
Okay, so I wanted this clarification. When I worked on the dredging committee and we were going to do hydraulic dredging, we could not get a site to put it at because of the runoff of the water. So it had to go too far and there was nobody that would agree with it. So with the hydraulic dredging, where is the end of the pipe going to be, and has it been approved, and will it work with that situation?
We're looking at potentially different sites. When we first talked about that, the administration of the City of Bloomington Utilities did not want us to use much more land for disposal sites. There is new administration, and there are very much more on board with these environmental projects. There's a couple of 10-acre plots, one on North Shore near Possum Trot, and a couple other areas where I think would be ideal. Vic Helson, the director there, seems much more open to the idea of letting us use that. So I think there will be areas that we can find. The project we would have to have a disposal site, but I believe there are areas, and I believe there's willingness from the City of Bloomington now to work with us on that.
And Dick is a good friend of mine, I'll talk to him more.
Please. Okay, so we've kind of gotten, you've sort of done your sediment transport, which is great, but let's go backward to what needs to happen with this budget today, since this is the last chance to change it. Mike, you want to?
Well, we would change account number 4140 to 1.2 million
Okay.
versus the 1 million. And then in the capital, Adam, is your dump truck, is that 6704, or is that?
Yeah, I think 6704.
So
we would put 200,000.
6704, we would increase capital on 6704, $200,000. And then,
The rest would remain the same other than the revenue.
the rest, okay?
Is that
And this really helps out with the expediency too, as far as getting in there and doing a project. When we were looking at doing the controlled bond, potential remonstrance processes, the election, there was no way that we were gonna hit the ground until at least 2021 with the project and have money in our hands. With the uncontrolled process and the lower limits that we're looking at, we could potentially have boots on the ground mid to late next year. So I think for expediency and getting in there, and moving dirt. I think it'll be a win-win.
Is
I
every-
have a
no.
question, I don't know if it affects the budget or not, but it's a random question. So I know there's been talk that since the beach is closed on the weekends for like where people who live could park, and I feel like that would cost money to make that happen. So is that budget in this year's budget, or that has to be addressed in this 2020 budget?
Actually, that's going to be addressed by having our salaried equipment operator now. So my plan is this winter time when our excavators run land, have Clinton take this bay area where the broken bridge is now. We're going to put a culvert in there. We're going to clear out those bays and we're going to put down pea gravel so the boats can still land on it. We're going to create a big landing area right there. And the cost on that with the salaried employee will just be minimal, will be the cost of stone. So we can find that well within the budget, the current budget, yeah.
The cumulative maintenance potential adjustment, is that something we foresee to handle in 2021?
It would take effect in 2021. We would introduce it in 2020
Okay.
if it passes. April 1st is the deadline. That's why we start in January.
Okay.
There's 3 meetings. Adam would have to post it in the newspapers. So we introduce it, then it comes up for public discussion, and then the 3rd meeting is the approval, if it gets approved. So, okay.
So we're good on this for.
Yeah, that's a 2021
first quarter.
increase
Okay.
if it gets approved. So,
Okay.
Adam is suggesting that we increase 4140 to 1.2 million. And I'll go ahead and make this a motion because it'll need to be a motion for the board. So we increase 4140 to 1.2 million. The 6750 sediment mitigation will stay at 950,000. We'll increase 6704 for a new dump truck at 200,000. The other 50,000 is for the engineers costs, okay? And I'll make that motion, that we make those changes.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
So when you went up from 1 to 1.2, I thought the dump truck was in the 1, I thought that was the increase. So I feel like you're hitting it 2 places.
tell me where I hit it in 2 places, if you don't
So
mind.
4140 went up by 200,000.
Yes, that is,
That was for the dump truck, and then you said.
That's the revenue side.
That's the revenue side.
Okay, I'm sorry. So it's just accounting stuff, okay.
yeah, I tried to balance. I'm trying to balance. So, thank you, though. Thank you, appreciate that.
Could I ask about the dump truck?
Say again?
Can I ask about the dump truck?
Oh,
You said, and you mentioned tri-axle, so we don't need a tri-axle? We do need one.
No, we need an articulated dump. We need an off-road dump truck. The sites are so muddy. We even get that big one hung up sometimes. It's a 1980 something. The front differential doesn't work on it. It hasn't for the last decade.
I get it.
There's no windows in it, and the transmission's going out.
So like, we use that 8 months of the year, or
Yeah, I'd probably say the better part of 8 months of the year.
is it possible to contract and rent that equipment, or find someone who has a lot of that equipment and have them supply it for our need, or maybe, we have a transmission go with $200,000 truck,
The renting on that stuff goes pretty, when we rent excavators, like the long arm excavators or big equipment, if ours is down, a lot of times you're looking at, 2,000 to 3,000 a week plus for this big equipment. What they do have, the different buyers, is where you can do a lease to own these government rates, where you can lease it at the rate, the entire lease goes towards the purchase, and then you buy it for $1 at the end of there. So we can look at the different financing options. We're looking at a good used truck, it's in that $150,000 to $200,000 range. These trucks, if you're going brand new, you're looking well at $250,000, $300,000 plus. So if we have it in the budget and we do get the bond, it'd be nice if we have that capital just to go ahead and purchase it so we have it there and then sell ours while it's still running and we can get a little bit of money out of it.
So if I heard you right, we're looking at potentially used piece of equipment.
Yes.
What would you anticipate the lifespan of that? I know it's going to depend on the specific piece of equipment we're looking at, but it sounds like the existing one is 80-something.
Yeah, it's about 40 years. They last for a long time. They really do, but this one's just kind of hitting the end of its lifespan. I would anticipate if we buy, something in the early to mid 2000s, that we could easily get another 20 plus.
Yeah, so that would be the key, is if we do use bond proceeds for it, I'd want to ensure that the lifespan would at least be 20 years.
Okay. Mike, do you care to make the motion for the changes?
You know, the long-term plan is, one second, Frank, and then maybe everyone will answer your question for you. Our long-term plan is with this full-time operator, and we do get the 14 acres for a disposal site, we'll have to build a serpentine berm around there. It's going to take quite a bit of man-hours and equipment. So, you know, we're looking long-term at getting a dump truck, a triaxle dump truck perhaps, and a backhoe, because we will have quite a bit of work to create this disposal site, so that when we hydraulically dredge, Malcolm and Ron and I went and visited 3 disposal sites in Ohio, and it's quite a bit of work to create these berms. So the 200,000 is just, in my opinion, you know, just a stepping stone of where we want to be when we start hydraulically dredging. So I'll leave Frank. I apologize.
That's okay. The Lake Health Task Group has not completed its discussions yet, but a couple things that address the budget component is this would potentially not be a 20-year bond. We potentially would think of this as a 10-year bond, because we're only hitting this with a small amount of hydraulic dredging, and there's going to be repetition of that kind of effort in the future. So we're looking to shorten that, which is going to be less interest, but more upfront annual fees. To try and potentially compensate for the upfront annual fees going up, one of the discussion items is for us to, within the hydraulic dredging, hit the areas where we are going through and doing the annual spraying and hydraulically dredge those areas. So instead of spending $55,000 potentially in a given year, we can save $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a decade annually each year and not spend money because we made it deep enough where the vegetation doesn't grow. So there's a number of other things that I won't address today because it doesn't relate to the budget. But we're not just hydraulically dredging the beginning of the delta. There's other areas that we would be looking at to eliminate wetlands, address other access areas, those kind of things. But the budget pieces, we're looking at potentially a 10-year cycle and potentially hitting wetland, hitting vegetation areas so we can save spraying money. We have $50,000 in the budget, so those future numbers could go down, and we get $5,000 a year money that we have to match. So we would be spending something, but there would be some problems and changes in that.
Thank you.
Okay, so
Back to that motion.
yes, so that this balances, the revenue side is 4140. I would increase that 200,000. That would be a total of 1.2 million on the revenue side. On the expense side, so that this balances, 6750 remains the same at 950,000. The other 50,000 is engineering costs. The 200,000 would go to 6704 to look at purchasing a used or something better than what we have now, a dump truck at the disposal site, articulating dump truck. What's so funny?
Better than what we have now? Like
Well,
a lot better?
We will be.
I thought that was a funny.
Well, I'm trying to throw some humor in there,
So
so,
what would the engineering cost cover, the 50 grand?
yes.
I mean, what would it,
Well, we still have recurring engineering costs for permitting. When we get this site, if we get the 14 acres, we have permitting there. So we still have engineering
And a
costs.
design on the serpentine.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so the engineering costs are for the disposal area. Okay.
yes.
We'll be contracting out this hydraulic dredging. So we'll be.
I'll leave you with this last comment. When we went to Ohio, I can tell you on our 2.5, 3 hour drive back, we discussed that, Ohio was 5 years ahead of us. We get this done next year, we did it in 3 years. You know what, right? I mean, this really would be something that we accomplished this in 3 years to have a hydraulic dredger on this lake. Because we're mechanically dredging now, we're digging, we're putting it in a box, and then we're redigging it out of the box. This is really something that if we can get this accomplished.
And your motion was?
Increase 4140 to 1.2 million.
Second.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Michael.
Welcome.
Adam, is there anything else on the sediment management project, sediment transport study update, or did you pretty much cover what you wanted to do? Okay, thank you. Mary Jane, it's your turn. Strategic planning.
So as to not be redundant, the SPC met last Friday, and we spent a great part of the time talking about what you've already heard on the sediment transport study. We also spent pretty much almost the rest of our time talking about the September 14th house tour by boat fundraiser, which is coming up. And we spent a little bit of time on the August newsletter. I won't bore you with those details, and the August newsletter will be a surprise, but I'd like to let Kathy and Ann spend some time giving you the details on the upcoming fundraiser. I passed out to the board a couple of sheets that are up at the table under a rock now. So that gives some other details. And I think this year, I'll just let Kathy start out, but I would just say I think this year is going to be even more successful than last year because of the commitment of the Lemonade Days committee, and particularly Ann and Kathy. So take it away. There's no pressure here.
Thank you. We're so far in good shape. If you picked up this flyer, it has this lemonade event on it. It highlights the houses that we're going to have this year. And we thought we were low, and then we had an abundance. So these are the ones that we're doing. And I think they're really wonderful houses. They're going to be interesting and unique and different. We have a new build. We have a house that's been there since the 50s that is the Bansel's home. She's a professional landscaper, and some gorgeous landscape to look at. Some very interesting things to see at each of the homes. We also have the Bloomington Yacht Club, and I have spoken to them. I'm going to talk to them again, but they may have some of their sailboats, and there's a guy there that makes his own boats, and he may come and bring his boat. It's interesting to look at. So I think we have an interesting mix of houses for people to look at. We expanded the time this year because last year everybody said, hey, we went on the tour, we got back, we didn't have time to bid on the auction stuff. So this year we're starting the tour at noon. The last boat will depart at 3, which should give them plenty of time to get back here before the whole event ends at 6 o'clock. We have 2 different bands coming this year, so we will have music from 12 to 6. We will again have tastings. We have wine, beer, and this year we have spirits tasting because Big Woods is coming and they're bringing some harder stuff than beer and wine. So,
is there a limit on the spirits?
You buy the ticket, you can have the spirit tasting. So, but I think it's going to be exciting. We've got some great stuff planned with that. And so now what we need all of you to do is, we also are having our silent auction, and we have some really great stuff this year. We have had some really interesting donations, some bigger stuff and some cool stuff. So come and bid. Drink first and then bid.
I've taught you well.
Yes. Oh yes, we also have food trucks coming. Thank you. She's my better half over there. She remembers all the things that I forget. So anyway, on this page it tells some of the other things that are going on there, and it has our information. So Ann and I, Malcolm, Mary Jane, and Adam could answer probably most questions that you would have. I sent an email out again yesterday about it. It was in the last newsletter, but you should have all gotten an email about it, which you can just click on and reserve your tickets. It helps us a lot if people buy their tickets in advance because it helps us with our scheduling. So if you're thinking of going, or if you know people are going, please encourage them to pre-register. It will also be cheaper. $25 in advance, $30 at the door for the tour. And then the tasting is $10 in advance, $15 at the door. But last year, everybody said they got plenty of tastes. So we'll stop the auction at 5:30, so that gives us time to process before the very end. We would like everyone to pick up their stuff at 6, but this year we're going to say if you need it, because some of our stuff is really big this year. So if you need to come the next day, we'll have a couple of hours on Sunday to come here to the shelter house and pick up your items if you need to.
And they could also help clean up.
That would be awesome, yes, but we will take any and all volunteers. Ann is fabulous at getting volunteers, so we have 9 boat drivers this year. And you have to use one of our boats because that helps just the getting in and around the docks. So you load here and they're gonna go in a big circuit. Frank is gonna be our boat master over there directing everyone, and this year we're using walkie-talkies so that they can all talk to each other and talk to the homeowners. And so you get on it, you can go through the circuit. If you wanna get off at that stop, you can, or you can just go on to the next one if you've seen that house or whatever. And then they'll all end up back here at River Point. Like I said, the last tour is gonna go at 3, and this year we added on the site, you can request a time for your boat. Last year we didn't do that, and some people suggested that, and I thought that was a good idea. So now, this year, if you want to be at the noon boat, get in there and get your name in quickly so you can pick the time for that. And then that'll help us coordinate all of that. There's posters, and I would ask if everybody could take some of these and put them around, pass them out to friends and family, or put them around their businesses so that people know. It is on the Brown County events page and the Bloomington events page. So we hopefully will get people from the outside. It's free to come to the event. So the music and the silent auction, you can bid, all the food's not free, but you can come and purchase from the food trucks that are coming. And we have a barbecue place, and we also have a taco truck at this point. We may have some other things. And so I think it'll be a lot of fun for everybody to come. So you don't have to pay anything to come to the event, but if you want to do tastings over tour, that's what it costs. We are collecting auction items. So if you are able to donate something to our auction, all those proceeds are going to go into the Lake Lemon Enhancement Fund. So we appreciate anything anybody donates and bid high, and all that money goes in there. And again, if your business or if you have something, that extra tickets to a game that you're not going to use or whatever, we love having those items because they usually go very well. Again, log on. You can go to www.lakelemon.org to find the link to the tickets, but I did send it out in the newsletter and also to the, just as a separate email, and all those, all you have to do is click, and you can go through and register everything, and you can pay at that time with your credit card. Spread the posters. I talked about the timing. Let's see. What am I forgetting? Anything?
I have a couple things to add.
Okay.
People can also take out an ad in the brochure.
Yes, that's the other thing. Thank you. In addition to the silent auction, we are selling ads in the brochure. We made pretty good money doing that last year. So if your business or you personally or anybody would like to, we make a book. It's basically the size of a half piece of paper. So you can purchase a quarter page, a half page, or full page ad. And if you want corporate sponsors, we do have some corporate sponsors, and we're charging them $500 to be a corporate sponsor. We have several of those already, which is great because that's money that's just going straight into our fund. And they will come, and we do have a vendor that's coming that's going to bring golf carts and a boat on a trailer and all kind of cool stuff. So it should be fun. And this is not related to that, but I also have flags for sale, which we will have, and we will have clothing items. I'm turning in an order on Monday for clothing, so if you want hats, shirts, whatever, I'm going to turn that on Monday, and I will have a few extras that I will bring to the event in September to sell as well. But if you want a specific size or color or know what you want, it helps me if you pre-order. So the forms are over here. What did I forget?
You didn't forget anything, I just had 2 things I wanted to mention. As far as volunteers go, I want to do a personal shout out to the Gambell family, boat driver, and 2 sons. One son is made a bar with the Lake Lemon logo on it for the silent auction. Another son made a light fixture to go over the bar, both for the silent auction. And one son is buying an ad and sponsoring us in that manner. So we need last year, our goal was to raise $5,000 to fund the Monroe County Community Foundation, like Lemon Enhancement Fund, and we actually raised $9,000. And our last year were $300, maybe $200, $300. So we
And
made
last
over
time,
$8,000 last year, so we're hoping to do that for each homeowner.
And Annie, I promised you that I would bring up, and I think you discussed this at SPC and I was out of town, the insurance quotient.
Yeah.
And Adam and I had a conversation this week about adding that insurance to cover the homeowners and any potential injury that would happen. Our policy apparently does not cover that.
Well, I've asked two homeowners have come to me and asked for certificates of insurance, just
Okay,
in case.
got it. So was the quote 600 something? for-
660.
660?
So essentially that, our policy wouldn't cover that, but for $660, we have a completely separate policy, so we can add those homeowners as additional insured on the certificate of insurance, and then if something were to happen, which it shouldn't, but something were to, it wouldn't affect our policy at all. Originally, I was kind of against getting it, until I realized that the other homeowners would be on that. And once you get other people's houses, then it's 660 something.
It's slightly more than 660, it's like 661 and some change.
And it would cover if someone, for example, would slip falling off, getting off the dock or
It would, and it would
injury.
also cover, one of our homeowners' concerns is they did this at their home, their home, not their living home, and they had some damage and some theft. So it would cover such things as
Okay.
that.
Well, I would like to throw out then that the board would consider entertaining a motion to cover that cost. I know we don't have this exact number, but
I'll make a motion that the board cover the cost up to $670.
all right.
Second.
Any other thoughts?
I just had a quick question on the insurance. Are the boat owners covered also?
An additional insured will cover the entire event.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we cover the cost of insurance up to $670. Any further discussion? All those
We
in
did
favor?
that last year too, if I recall.
We did, and then we thought, well, we maybe didn't need it, it might have been, but we figured it out. No, because Lance paid half of it last year.
Oh, good.
So, okay, it's been moved and seconded, and all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you
One
go.
last mention, a shout out to the boat drivers, because it's their own personal gas, and as I understand it was an entire tank of gas in the boat over there last year, so a shout out to the boat drivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And I will say that we have not had, last year, every homeowner gave us rave reviews. We had no trouble at all. And each homeowner is providing their own people. Last year, we did volunteers, but we've asked them to do it this year, to bring in their own family and friends and they can shut off any parts of their house that they don't want to have open. But we had a very respectful crowd last year, and we make them take off their shoes, or we've got booties for their shoes. I think that homeowner that was complaining, it was a very high-priced home tour, and people came in stilettos with the caps off the
And
bottom of their shoes.
it was excessive drinking.
And, yeah, they were doing a lot of drinking at the home, so that was led to some, we worked really hard to control those factors so that we don't have any of those issues
I
here.
can't wear stilettos.
Yes, keep your stilettos at home.
Thank you. Let's hope for a day just like this.
Yes, it is rain or shine, and it is, because like I said, most of the stuff is in here, and unless there's lightning and tornadoes on the lake, we can still, take people to the homes, and we'll have umbrellas for everybody if they need that. Does anybody have any questions on any piece of that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for helping us, because we need the promotion of everything.
I'm getting really good at this thing. The next SPC meeting will be Friday, September 6th at 3:30 at the office, and that concludes my report.
There you go. That brings us to District 7 wastewater treatment plant discussion. I got a very nice call several weeks ago and a request to be on the agenda from Frank Van Over. Frank, how do you pronounce your last name?
Van Overmeren.
Van Overmeren, who is a tireless worker for all things Lake Lemon. And 3 to 5 minutes of your time with Russ Herndon, also from District 7, to outline, bless you, outline the work that they have done thus far.
Come on up, Russ. And just want to start with clarification that while we may talk about this as District 7, this is not a District 7 thing. This is a lake-wide initiative. We are essentially creating a sewer district, the Lennon Environmental Cooperative. We're a sewer co-op. We are looking to create multiple decentralized sewer system operations around the lake, serving pockets of the lake. Our geographical area will actually be 1 mile boundary of the lake, so we would be able to include the trailer park. It's a governmental entity, not for profit. We're not here to make money for anybody individual. Looking to essentially create individualized sewer systems. This is Project Area A, which is mostly District 7, but not all of District 7, because we don't anticipate right away underneath the railroad tracks. So that would eliminate parts of our area further to the east. It's a combination of multiples of different newer technologies which make this extremely energy efficient, very small and compact. It's not the traditional sewer systems that you look at or have in your normal municipalities. This is our treatment plant. It is very green. So it essentially looks like a greenhouse. Russ and I went and looked at a facility this week that would essentially fit in the same footprint of that. They would have slightly more tanks than this particular one would. It uses a combination of sunlight, algae, and microscopic bugs that eat the sewage. And processing the water would end up back in the lake. We are working with the IU School of Law to create the governmental entity. We would, in projection, this process starting from scratch of July 1, rolling forward takes us a schedule of 2.5 to 3 years. We will be, by the end of this calendar year, at least a year into that process. We are moving extremely fast, doing multiple things at the same time, not step A, then step B, like step B, step C. We have some challenges of governmental organization, those kind of things. We will be looking for the board we have 2 requests of you. First request is to allow us to utilize this facility on October 12th, I believe. I think that's what we is our, we need to push things back. We are already engaged an engineering firm to go through and help us in the process. We will be receiving their information in early September. The shelter house dates and things are not available, and we have a home tour also, so there's just so much going on. So we'd like to utilize the shelter house for free. This would be a public meeting open to everyone in the lake and those surrounding the lake. And we'd like to utilize that for free. The second piece is we would like a resolution from the board as part of our rural, this is all sponsored under the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Development. They have grants and operational programs to help sponsor and the eventual bonds to construct these kinds of facilities. And there are more than 100 around of these in the state of Indiana already. We have seen 2 already. One of this exact technology, and then another one which is traditional types of technology. Been around for already 25 years and did a major infrastructure replacement 5 years ago. It's at a lake just west of Columbus, Ohio. So it's basically a sewer entity, charges sewer fees. It's elect to connect, you're not required to connect. Our technology that we're looking at is advancements of multiple kinds of technologies. We would replace a traditional septic holding tank with a new tank that's roughly 3 foot in diameter, 6 foot tall. It is a pump grind system. It would go through, it would go through and grind up the sewage, pump it into a pressurized line, not a gravity line, which would then take it to the processing plant. We have the challenge in District 7, more than everywhere else, so our Project A is focusing on that to where we are the highest concentration of homes with the least amount of ground land that would ever comply with Brown County or state regulatory rules or setbacks from the lake, property lines, setbacks from the house, gravel areas, parking areas, garage areas, those kind of things. And state laws coming in the future that have been tested on the books. The reality is that no one will have the easy ability to replace existing systems. It's only going to get harder, only going to get worse. So this is the solution to that. Russ?
I might commission, got to know the public, different health departments and everything like that. In the past 2.5 years, I've worked on trying to help them rewrite the septic ordinance. I quickly found that they're never going to bring a sewer over to us, to the Brown County. You know, they can't seem to get this bean Boston thing going they've been working on for 25 years. So this is a decentralized system. This basically is not linked by a pipe to any big plant. And this is the most cost-effective way and the most green way, at least power and maintenance, to do this kind of thing. And there's precedent all over the state. The Dunes National Park up north just put one of these in a couple of years ago. And I think it's the model of the future. It can be fitted with solar panels to generate all the power required to run, or majority of the power to run the plant. That's another idea down the road. So this is the only way we can quickly react and do what we want to do here. So that's our plan. This could be moved. We could have these all around the lake. So maybe it's the future for us.
And we've also talked to Mr. Kelson with this CDU, and Russ and I are scheduled to be on their meeting for September 3rd, their CBU board, requesting property lease of a parcel, a few acres of land in Little Africa, similar to our Conservancy District, for a $1 50-year term. They've already given us verbal approval. It's just a formality, essentially, to go to the CBU board and request that. So we don't have property acquisition issues. We have setting up the governmental structure, being helped by the IU School of Law. We have a lot of things moving very fastly, and the CBU is very, already told us that they have additional parcels of land sprinkled around, less on South Shore, but more on North Shore. They will be also providing leases for those lands also for us to do more of these, and potentially work with the trailer park to get another one of these kinds of processing plants. Like Russ said, this is a decentralized system. It's one governmental entity that essentially owns and operates all of these, but they're all essentially independent for the groupings of homeowners and or businesses. Like the port will potentially could be connected into this, the marina could be connected into this type of system to eliminate septic systems around the lake. So I think that's it. Again, we will be asking, so I think if we can put in a request and block out October 12th, we can get this room, this building for free. We'll ask to put it in the next newsletter. We'll put it out in a web blurb, advertise as much as we can. And like I said, this is a lake-wide initiative. This is not a district initiative. We are looking at things as project areas, because we're going to potentially be overlapping. There are 2 counties, and we're not following district lines. We're following normal areas and groupings of homes, and including places that are not even in the Conservancy, like the trailer park. So, and then the second piece is we'll be asking for a resolution from the board of support. There's no financial commitment from the board. There's no operational commitment for the board. You are one of the governmental entities within our area. You are not a registered sewer district, so we're not obligated to give your support. This is an issue with the rural development people. Like the Little Opry, if you guys are familiar with that, and how that ground to a halt and sat and did nothing for more than a decade, and eventually the strategic partners of that moved into acquiring property within Nashville and built there that eliminated the sewer conflict. It was the sewer conflict of 2 different regional boards debating who was going to get the revenue that ground that project to a halt for more than a decade. So that's the purpose of those letters of support, but you are a governing board within our operating area. So it's basically saying, hey, we know about it and we don't. You are not looking to become a sewer district. And if you are, hey, let me know. I'll give it to you. I'll help you do it. But
Russ and I were talking about beforehand on there. I mean, he was saying we pretty much have voluntary buy-in. That's one of the.
There's a 51% operational by rural development guidelines at different stages. You have to have an operational commitment for 51% of the property owners within the project area. So we're already past that threshold, and that's one of the contentious areas of the Bean Blossom project, that people who signed on are frustrated and bowing out, and they're having a difficulty meeting the 51%. Project Area A, as you can guess, we are way above the 50% limit. We have a few people that, because of funding, potentially might not go in, but there's also grant programs for lower income, retired veterans, those kinds of things, that they can get augmented fees and connection fees that our operational cooperative could receive and roll those to those types of homeowners based upon income base. So we're looking to some of those things that'll keep our membership up high. But this is all elective. You don't have to connect with it.
Okay, I see.
Malcolm, you've been jonesing to ask
Yeah, I
a
have a
question.
couple questions and a comment.
Okay, I'd rather,
Oh, yeah, okay.
we've only asked for 3 to 5 minutes just to introduce the project. We have a million things that we're getting information very rapidly, including our engineers. So I'll take a few questions. So focus them, please.
Wow.
First, I just want to
Straight to
verify
your
that the legal work you're doing or getting done, that applies to everybody. It doesn't need to be.
That will apply to that, that'll create our governmental co-op that will operate this entity for the area surrounding 1 mile of Lakeland.
All right, and to those that don't think much about sewer systems and septic systems, this can add significant value to a home, especially if you're a situation like ours, where it was originally built as a 2-bedroom home, and so the septic system was sized for that, then they added on, and now we put in a bunk room, but we can't mention that in real estate.
3 aspects to that I'll address. On real estate value, real estate agents tell us that it doesn't increase the value of your home a lot, because like you have to have a kitchen, you have to have a room, you have to have a method to deal with sanitary sewer. So we still have it. The fact that you're municipal versus septic gains you a few thousand, $5,000, $7,000 value. What it does for lake property, if you're looking at lake properties where 95% of them are septic systems, and there's a few that are a municipal system, those are in high demand. Those properties will sell much, much faster, is what they tell us. Third piece, like my home. Anybody who passed me by on South Shore, we know we put a tremendous amount of recent investment into that home. We are limited based upon our home and affidavit with the Brown County Commission Board to where we are a 2-bedroom home. With this system, I can switch to a 4-bedroom home permit, and my appraised value of my home will increase by more than $200,000.
Right.
So I can interject a couple of things. State legislature this year had a thing called House Bill 1261, which is a point of sale septic inspection. So if they get it passed this next year, and anyone wants to sell their home, they have to have their septic inspected. If it fails, they have to put a new one in. If they don't have room for a new septic, you know, that really can encumber the sale of the property, and certainly cost money to the seller or negotiate with the buyer.
Look at those mound systems, it's horrendously expensive.
Yeah. Now, most lakes have a program where if it's on septic, that periodically everyone on the lake has their septic system pumped and tested, and on site. That's, I think, a great opportunity for us to get our arms around really what we've got here. We're studying the sedimentation. Why don't we get this figured out too? And that might help encourage more of these plants to go around, like if people want them.
You guys have done an incredible job getting this going. I can't say anything but thank you. And
Motion to waive the
Second.
did you guys hear that? Michael has made a motion to waive the fee for the shelter house so that they can have a public meeting in October.
I will second that.
Good.
October 12th.
October. It's been
Isn't
moved.
that a bond meeting?
What's that?
Isn't there a bond meeting?
No.
I had that on my calendar.
No, those are not happening. We should have mentioned that. Those aren't going to happen right now.
Okay.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded that we will allow you to have the shelter house free of charge for your October meeting. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
What time is that meeting, please?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll say 11 o'clock a.m.
Thank you.
It's good.
The second request, which is not a motion, is that we prepare a resolution of interest for consideration at the September meeting.
Okay.
And we would request that potentially for the October meeting after we have our ability to get our information from the engineers.
So
submit that to your board packet and allow you to potentially attend our October 12 meeting.
So Whatever appropriate meeting.
Whatever appropriate. Got that. All right, very good. That brings us to public comment. Gail?
Hey, I have a couple things. One real quick thing is, I'm a lake a lot, and I saw a pontoon boat with the 2/3 of the front up in the air because the motor was so huge. When you're talking about paying more for weight things, so there are some pontoon boats that are putting these giant motors on. So I've been coming to River Point for 37 years, but recently I've been coming 3 to 4 days a week because my grandkids live right up the road. The third grandchild and taking the 2 older ones, and the 3-year-old, 6-year-old, and I've been picking up about 75 cigarette butts a day, 4 days a week off the beach mostly. And so I feel, and I've talked to Adam about this, that there needs to be a lot more signage about cigarette butts because this makes it an unattractive beach to a lot of people. And my daughter has friends who come here a lot who have been kind of disgusted by that. So we need signage. I really think there should be a sign when you're walking out of the water this way on this edge of the beach that says no smoking on the beach. And I think there should be no smoking even on the grassy areas, so there should be a sign saying smoke in the parking lot only. If it was up to me, I would say $1,000 fine if you smoke. Something. Adam did ask one person 3 times to stop, and she didn't stop, and he asked her to leave the beach. So I don't know if there could be some kind of little punishment mentioned. The other thing is Yellowwood Lake and Bryan Park and many other areas have shelter houses that are never locked up like this. My family spent so much time 30 years ago in the shelter house when we were down at the beach with the grandparents, well, I am now the grandparents, and it would start raining. This is going to be a much more attractive place to attract more people if the shelter house is open. And Adam, actually, I've talked to several times about it, has agreed with this idea, and I think I mentioned it once before in the winter, but we didn't do that this year, but maybe next year. He was saying, why don't we just take down all these wood things? Now, the shelters houses at both those places have a little sign out front saying, when rented, it is not available, and it is rented at this date. So you can still have the ability to rent it. So someone that wanted to come to a birthday party, if they wanted to guarantee use of the shelter house, they would pay the rent. Otherwise, it's open to the public, and when suddenly it starts raining on the beach, it's nice to run out here. The other thing I want to say is that in looking at replacing something like a shelter house, there are so many factors that people don't think about. And one of the factors is the environmental impact that went into this place 40 years ago. So we're not just talking about the environmental impact of tearing it down, getting rid of all this crap into the landfill, but we're also talking about the environmental impact that has already been spent. All of the fossil fuel that was spent to bring this here, all of the fuel that was spent to make these cinder blocks, that's already been spent, but that's a factor in this shelter house. I like it that it's old. I like it that it's funky. When I was trying to keep River Point open, when we closed it 20 years ago, and I was in the committee to keep it open, people that wanted to close it, oh, these cracks mean that it's going to fall down. Well, obviously, this is 25 years later and it hasn't fallen down. If we're thinking about replacing, instead of replacing, let's add on to or build a second nicer shelter house. It'd be a shame to get rid of this one. And I would be signing petitions and anything I could not to get rid of it. Landfills are so disgusting, and I spent a lot of time researching the landfills, and taking all the stuff away would not be good. So I don't like that word replace. And then about the gatehouse, when replacing the gatehouse, you were talking about that our $450,000 in that fund is going to be for capital. Maybe we could use part of that fund to replace the gatehouse. Make sure that those words used on that $450,000 that we want to use for something we want to use for capital things, something. So maybe we can use that for the gatehouse and maybe for the signage. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Shall we put discussion about any of these points on a future agenda, Adam? Sounds like maybe they're...
What was that? I didn't hear the squirrels.
That's not the first time we've heard from you, Gail, on the shelter house, and I don't know, Adam, what your thoughts are, because we really haven't talked about it, but maybe on a future agenda, we should have a discussion about what the implications would be. Certainly not a decision to be made today.
Never heard anybody say to tear it down. That's the first I've heard to tear it down.
I'm referring more to could it be more open and useful, but I don't know about.
Yeah, I would support that. I would also support support a discussion on the smoking.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody else? Yep. Oh, fight for it. Frank, saw you first.
I'm gonna just put Les on the spot. He's the chair of the Parks and Recreation Task Group, so maybe that task group, which includes me, and I'm willing to step up and help, just needs to gear up and address a number of these concerns and do their job. Sorry, guys. But we need to come up with a plan, long-term plan. Michael, you're smiling because you're in the group too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's time for all of us, Bill, oh, by the way, you're over there too. We just all need to step up and do our job and create our long-term strategic plan, which includes what we're gonna do next week, next year, 3 years from now, on and on and on. Present our information to the board.
I've thought about the building.
Yep.
To Gail's point, the only way we're gonna quantify this, just have a structural engineer come and say, you know, the building structure is good, we need new roof, maybe this or that. The masonry fireplaces alone are $25,000 a piece. You can't build them for that kind of money these days. So, I'm trying to redo it if possible.
And those inspections are relatively inexpensive. I mean, we're talking a couple $100.
$500.
Yeah, 500, yep. All right, Andy, did you have something in?
What's
Pay no attention to the fact that our meeting is blowing around. I don't think man behind the curtain, take out the doors and windows. Maybe closer. Maybe not. Ann, go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's been some confusion this week about, like Facebook web pages that may or may not be like Lemon official web pages. A lot of information going around specifically about the Would the board like to comment on what the official Lake Lemon website is, where to get official information, so it's not rumors and...
It says Lake Lemon Conservancy District. All that are Monroe County info, friends of, those are not the official page. The Lake Lemon Conservancy District is the official page. When you go to there, the picture is the sign in front of the office, and the background is the bench up here. That is the official one.
Is there a way to make it look? I mean, because I know people have just Googled Lake Lemon information and all these different pages come up. Is there a way to make the title of ours more
like the official Lake Lemon Conservancy District?
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
Which is lakelemon.org.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, no, maybe we can somehow highlight it, or I don't know. Okay, you'll look into it?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Anyone else? If not, this is the last time we'll be here this summer. In September, the next meeting is going to be back at the CBU building in Bloomington at 6 o'clock on Thursday, September 26th. So that means fall is here, I guess, almost. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, please. So moved. And second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for coming. Have a great day.
All right, good to see you.